Asterisk, it all began on a Wednesday evening during a special edition of the Gutfeld show aired live from Washington, D.C., titled The State of Disunion. The network promoted it as an honest, unfiltered debate between prominent political figures across the aisle. The biggest surprise of the night, however, came in the form of a guest appearance by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, someone few ever expected to willingly sit across from Greg Gutfeld on live television. Asterisk, the studio audience buzzed with anticipation. Gutfeld, never one to play it safe, came in swinging. After a brief, forced handshake at center stage, he opened the segment with one of his trademark jabs. Asterisk, Congresswoman? He began with a smirk. Before we get into policy, I have to ask, what was more exhausting, writing the Green New Deal or planning your outfit for the Met Gala? Asterisk, some audience members chuckled. A few gasped. Asterisk, AOC grinned, but her eyes narrowed just slightly. Well, Greg, when you're invited to an event, you go. I wasn't exactly planning global policy over champagne, but since you brought it up, I wore a borrowed dress designed by a woman of color. I'd rather talk about that than your network's obsession with my wardrobe. Asterisk, Greg raised his eyebrows, clearly amused. Ah, the borrowed dress defense. Must be nice. But don't you find it a little contradictory that someone preaching about wealth inequality is rubbing elbows with billionaires at one of the most exclusive events on the planet? Asterisk, the Congresswoman leaned forward. What's contradictory is a media personality pretending to care about the working class while getting paid to laugh at them 5 nights a week. Asterisk, the studio erupted again. The tension was thick electric. Gutfeld gave a mock bow, pretending to be wounded. Touche. But let's talk policy now that we're warmed up. Asterisk. He pulled out a printout and waved it dramatically. Your Green New Deal do. You know how many jobs it would have destroyed if it had passed during COVID? You ever ask a single small business owner if they could afford to retrofit their storefronts to match your climate standards? Asterisk, AOC crossed her arms. Greg, I've spoken with more small business owners than you've had real conversations in your life. The Green New Deal isn't about ripping businesses apart. It's about investing in a future that won't collapse under environmental catastrophe. But I get it, fear-mongering sells ad time. Asterisk, Greg interrupted. Or does promising free everything with no math behind it? Asterisk, the jab clearly irritated her. She shot back. No one's promising free everything. That's your caricature. We're talking about redirecting bloated military budgets and billionaire tax breaks to things like healthcare, green infrastructure, and education. Asterisk, yes, Greg said, holding up his hands theatrically. Take it from bombs and give it to bureaucrats. Asterisk, now AOC was visibly annoyed. What you call bureaucrats, most people call nurses, teachers, and essential workers. You only value their labor when it fits your narrative. Asterisk, the segment was heating up, and the producers in the control booth whispered nervously into their headsets, but the ratings were climbing with each passing minute. Asterisk, Greg leaned forward, elbows on the table. Let's get real here. You built a brand on being the voice of the people. But when New York was locked down and small businesses were begging for relief, where were you? Asterisk, AOC leaned forward too. I was on the ground delivering supplies, coordinating resources, and pushing for relief legislation while your party blocked aid packages to play politics. Asterisk, Gutfeld didn't flinch. You were also tweeting about abolishing ICE and encouraging protests while telling Americans to stay home. Sounds like leadership until someone checks the receipts. Asterisk, the audience murmured, some clapping, some shaking their heads. The battle lines were clear, her tone sharpened. People like you have turned politics into a performance, Greg. You don't care about truth. You care about gotcha moments and dunking on guests. But real lives are affected by these policies, families. Children, I take that seriously. Asterisk, Greg leaned back, satisfied. Then why are you here? Because if you came expecting hugs and a choir, I've got bad news. You walked into the lion's den. Asterisk, without missing a beat, AOC replied, no, I walked into a comedy show masquerading as journalism? Asterisk, and just like that, the audience roared again. The sparks flying across the stage had only grown hotter. The Congresswoman's patience was wearing thin, and Greg Gutfeld, never one to back down, was already lining up his next hit. The moment cameras returned from commercial break, the energy on set had shifted palpably. The smiles were gone, and so was any pretense of polite civility. AOC sat rigidly in her chair, arms folded tightly across her chest, while Greg Gutfeld reclined comfortably, his signature smirk now practically tattooed across his face. So, Greg began, tapping his pen against the desk. Where were we? Ah, yes, saving the world by bankrupting the middle class. Let's keep going. AOC turned toward him sharply. You don't actually care about the middle class, Greg. You weaponize their struggles to attack progress. That's the real game here. Greg didn't hesitate. That's rich, coming from someone who lectures America about justice while voting against bipartisan border security. You say we need compassion, but border towns are begging for help. What's your answer? The remark hit a nerve. That's a disgusting oversimplification, AOC snapped. People at the border are humans, not political props. I've been there. Have you? Or are you too busy crafting punchlines while asylum seekers sleep in cages? Greg leaned forward. I've reported on it. And I've also seen the crime spikes and the economic strain, things you never talk about. Because it's easier to tweet virtue than confront reality. AOC's voice sharpened. You don't get to act like some crusader for the working class when you mock them for needing food stamps or free school lunches. You've made a career out of turning suffering into satire? The audience gasped. Greg chuckled, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Funny, he replied. Because satire is often just the truth people don't want to hear. And the truth is, your policies sound good until you try applying them to the real world. Free college, free healthcare, free housing, who pays? Congresswoman Magic Elves? I've said this 1,000 times. AOC fired back, her voice rising. Tax the ultra-wealthy, close loopholes, stop handing trillions to defense contractors. But your network wants Americans to believe billionaires are somehow victims. Greg gestured dramatically to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, behold Robin Hood with Wi-Fi. That was the last straw. AOC slammed her hand on the armrest, her voice suddenly booming. You think this is a joke? People are dying because of the misinformation you and your buddies spread? COVID denial? Climate change? Skepticism? Anti-vax garbage you call? That edgy commentary, but it's deadly. You laugh and people suffer. The studio fell into stunned silence. Even Greg sat back, blinking. But AOC wasn't done. Do you know what it's like to walk into a hospital in the Bronx and see nurses crying because they have no supplies? I do. And while we were fighting to get ventilators, you were busy mocking lockdowns and telling Americans that masks were woke nonsense. That's not free speech, it's reckless. Greg exhaled slowly. For a moment, he looked as if he might respond with restraint. But then he leaned in again, calm but biting. You want to talk about recklessness? Telling 20-year-olds that capitalism is evil while you sell merch on Instagram? Posing in Vogue while your district falls apart? Blaming everything on the system instead of offering practical solutions? That's performative politics, not leadership. AOC stood up abruptly, her mic wire pulling taut. The producers scrambled behind the cameras, unsure whether to cut to break. You know what's humiliating, Greg? She said, voice trembling with anger. It's not that you insult me. It's that you insult every single person who believed this was a chance for honest dialogue. You wanted this to be a circus, and congratulations, you're the ringleader. Gutfeld crossed his arms. Well, I didn't bring the elephants, Congresswoman. She ripped off the mic, tossed it on the chair, and turned to walk off stage. The studio audience was half on its feet, some in support, others stunned into silence. A camera followed her as she disappeared behind the curtains, flanked by aides. Greg turned back to the crowd, then to the camera. He took a slow breath, smirked again, and said, and that, folks, is what happens when social media rhetoric meets live television. The screen faded to black for a moment. But Twitter was already exploding. Clips of the confrontation flooded every feed. AOC's fury, Gutfeld's sarcasm, the tension, the walkout. Hashtags like hashtag AOC, vs Gutfeld, hashtag mic drop, and hashtag Fox News meltdown trended worldwide. The left claimed Gutfeld ambushed her and proved once again why mainstream media was hostile to progressive voices. The right hailed it as a takedown of woke politics live on national TV. Even late-night hosts and major networks picked up the story. Some criticized AOC for walking out, others praised her for refusing to be a punching bag. Meanwhile, Fox News celebrated the ratings spike, back in Washington. Both camps claimed victory. But the one thing no one could deny was this. The clash between AOC and Greg Gutfeld had just become a defining moment in the culture war. It would be replayed, rehashed, and reignited for weeks to come.